This episode of Straight Outta Health IT is brought to you by Welling, your trusted partner connecting healthcare organizations, data, and innovation for a healthier community. Welling helps healthcare providers navigate complex challenges, from analytics and AI to workforce solutions and community health impact. Because at Welling, we believe when healthcare is connected, everyone thrives. Learn more at wellinkcommunity.com.
Straight Outta Health IT, the mic stays surgical. Christopher Cunny moves vertical, purposeful. Strategist with the vision, breaking every system's cage. Guests unfiltered, flipping chapters every page. Industry talk raw, no sugar, no varnish. From policies to tech, the convo ain't tarnished. Blueprints unfold, the future in the dialogue. Cutting through the static sharp like a monologue. Change makers in the building.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Straight Outta Health IT. The show where we don't just talk about transforming healthcare, we talk about the people who are actually doing it. I'm your host, again, Christopher Cunny, and when I'm not hosting the podcast, I'm also serving in multiple capacities. I'm the managing partner of IoTech Consulting. I serve as CTO of Ask Me Your MD. I'm a recent author of an upcoming book called Diagnosing Distrust: Why People of Color Don't Trust the U.S. Healthcare System and How Technology Can Be Its Cure. And I am a healthcare equity advocate and change maker. And I am so very excited today to have this conversation because it's been such an important part of my personal journey and how I've been able to evolve as a healthcare thought leader. And I had a mentor early in my career to really help me emphasize the power and importance of our personal brand. So I want to jump right into this conversation with someone I'm excited to have on the program. So let's go. You've got credentials, right? You've got experience. You've got a resume that could fill a wall, but nobody outside of your immediate circle knows who you are. And none of that really matters as much as it really should, right? Especially in healthcare, and especially in healthcare IT. We spend an enormous amount of energy building platforms, implementing systems, advancing technology that runs through delivery. And most of us have never spent a single intentional hour building the most important platform that follows us everywhere we go, and that is our personal brand. So today we're going to fix that. Today's episode is a little different. We're not going to talk about EHRs. We're not going to talk about AI or interoperability or cybersecurity. Well, at least not directly, but we are going to talk about something that affects every single one of you listening today. So whether you're a CIO, a project manager, a consultant, a clinician, a vendor, or a student just trying to break into the industry, the conversation today hopefully will be thought-provoking and enlightening for all of you. We're going to talk about your personal brand. And I brought to the show today a heavy hitter to have this conversation with us. My guest today is someone who is described as a citizen of the world because her perspective on branding, identity, and influence doesn't live inside the walls of any single industry. She is a principal of Social Espionage, a strategic brand and intelligence firm that helps individuals and organizations understand, shape, and deploy their stories with precision and purpose. She works globally. She thinks globally, and she is going to challenge the way you think about who you are in this industry and how the world sees you. So let me, without further ado, introduce to you Dorothéa Bozicolona-Volpe.
Oh, my word. You got that right the first shot. Bravo, you.
Thank you. I practiced quite a bit on that.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Dorothéa.
I'm excited to be here with you today, Christopher. You know, you and I met in such an interesting way.
Yes.
I hope you do tell that story here in a minute, but I was listening to you talk about healthcare executives, and it's interesting because I think that we're all really good in life about working in the business that we're in, right? But we're never really good at working on ourselves.
Yes.
You know, and I think of personal branding as having a good diet and exercise,
Absolutely.
and flossing and brushing your teeth. You know, it should be something that is part of your everyday. And if I remember
Absolutely.
correctly, we actually met because of my personal brand. We met on LinkedIn. Do you want to tell
That's correct.
me? Because I think it's a pretty cool one.
Yeah, to your point, saw your profile on LinkedIn. I reached out to, I said, wow, this is an interesting person. And for me personally, as I was pursuing a career in healthcare technology at the executive level, I had a mentor and I was vying for a C-suite position. I had a mentor who was a CIO for a completely different industry that I was working with. And she helped me emphasize the importance of my personal brand. And the question she would ask me was, when the C-suite in your organization hear your name, what do they think about you? What do they say? What immediately comes to mind for them? I said, that's a good question. I really don't know. And she helped me understand the power and importance of establishing a personal brand that has me viewed as someone who can operate as a C-level executive. And so I sat out on the journey of developing and building a brand that influenced their decision. And so ultimately, I was asked to become a part of a program, a pipeline program for junior executives that were going to be positioned to move into C-suite roles, primarily because of a lot of the work I did with a personal branding coach back then years ago.
Mhm.
And so that's always stuck with me. It has always been something that I have always, employed as a strategy throughout my career. And as I've continued to evolve and change and take on different roles, I've been very intentional about making sure that personal brand reflects that. And so I love this concept of branding as intelligence, right? Because in healthcare IT, we talk about data intelligence all day long.
Yeah.
But most professionals in this space are completely illiterate when it comes to personal branding intelligence. They don't know what their brand says. They don't know what's missing. And they definitely don't know how to strategically enable that brand as well. So I want to dig into that a little bit with you. Let's start with Branding 101, okay?
Sure. I thought you were going to tell people how we ultimately met. I think I
Well,
invited.
I'm gonna let you tell your version of the story as well
Oh,
too.
okay.
Yeah, and so we met again through your brand. I saw your brand as a personal brand, a branding expert, the GOAT of branding, and I reached out. We connected. We had a great conversation, or it was immediate, an immediate connection between the two of us. You then began inviting me to certain events to hear you speak. And I instantly felt that it was important enough for me to share who you are with my broader community as well. And then since then, we've continued to find ways to partner and support each other's journeys as well. So that's my version. You tell your version.
It's very similar to yours. We met through social media. You reached out to me. And I think the first engagement that I had, I'm very involved with my alma mater, Emory University, Goizueta Business School. And you were kind enough to come and sit amongst a bunch of college students, university students. You were the tallest one in the room, I remember. And listen to how they respond, because we're now in a place in 2026, and I don't need to, again, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, because a lot of the people that listen to your podcast are probably in the area of information technology. We're in the age of AI. And a lot of jobs that used to be around for folks when they were graduating from uni that no longer exist now.
Exactly.
Really important that you stand out.
Yes.
And you were asking about personal branding 101. What I've always thought about personal branding, and I think you're really good at this, so please take this as a compliment,
Thank you.
is the first sort of tenet of building a good personal brand is to build community. One of the things I sort of wound up my speech with at the very end, I concluded, I said, be open for business. And somebody
Yes.
said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, have an open mind and an open heart.
Right.
Stop saying no.
Exactly.
Start saying yes. When somebody reaches out to you, take that 5 or 10 minutes, because you don't know how not only you can help them, but they can help.
That's right.
I call it networking with my hand in, not my hand.
Absolutely.
You
There
know,
you go.
how do you help build community? That's if
Yes.
someone said to me, like, what was the one thing that I could be really good at in my personal brand? And I would say build community. And it's not necessarily about having tons of numbers and tons of followers. It's not that.
Sure.
It's really about engagement, right? I
Absolutely.
notice when you post something, Christopher, your community is so enthralled and so looking forward, because you're very consistent, which is another big tenet. Consistency is key, right? I
Right.
say that all the time. even if your posts aren't super lengthy, even if they're not just anything other than kind of showing people that, hey, I participated in this healthcare summit in Las Vegas, Nevada. Here are some of the people that I met, and here are some of the celebrities that I hobnobbed with. By the way, I saw Shark Tank. Hello. But I notice how you get a ton of engagement. Now, it may not be 100 comments, maybe it's 7, right?
Exactly.
You get people liking and commenting, and I think part of that is that big community building piece, because chances are those people that say those top 20 to 30% are people you've probably interacted with in the past.
Absolutely.
And to know your personal brand, and that's the essential reason why they're following you, they're connected to you, and they're interested in your content. Does that make sense?
Thank you. It does absolutely make sense, and I appreciate the kind words as well too. It's find it kind of interesting too, Dorothea, when I've reached out to people first of all, when I'm on LinkedIn and I'm in technology and I reach out to people or I'm searching someone and there's nothing on their profile, right? There's not a picture, there's no details. I'm like, you're in IT and you don't realize it's the importance of social media and this platform as your first digital resume to the world. And it's always interesting when I don't see a lot of content about who that person is. The other thing I find interesting is those individuals that you reach out to and they say, well, you have to know their email address. So, there's a secret code, the secret code in order to get connected to them.
Yeah. And
and I'm like,
that gatekeeping is really off-putting because you never know if Forbes or the New York Times is
that's correct.
That's correct. Quote. And by your gatekeeping, right?
Yes.
What you're doing is you're telling the rest of the world, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but F off.
Yes, you can. Yeah, exactly. You can. This is an unfiltered conversation.
You can bleep that out. Okay, good.
My brand is an unfiltered conversation.
I'll use another phrase, naff off. There we go. That's what
well, and trust me, you can use the 4 letters as well, too. I'd say parental guidance is expected on my program. So, but yeah, it does give that F off type of perspective when you're reaching out to someone and it's like, I got to know some detailed information about you. Well, what's the point of connecting with you on LinkedIn? Because if I already know your email address, I can just email you.
That's right.
The point of LinkedIn is to reach out to people that I don't know, that I'm trying to connect with. And if I have to have the secret password in order to get connected to you, to your point, you never know who I am. I may be the CEO of a Fortune 100 company that's trying to seek you as a potential employee.
You could be an investor, you could be a stockholder, you could be a journalist that's trying to,
that's right.
them to talk about their business. And that's what it saddens me. But I think what has happened is that people don't realize that by having a gatekeeper like that, it's just off-putting. It says a lot about the person, like they're trying to hide something when they really shouldn't.
That's right. But to your point, we should have our hands open.
Open for business, open-hearted, open-minded.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because the LinkedIn is your personal business, your personal brand that is promoting your personal business. Whether you as an individual contributor, you have a company, you're supporting and promoting another business that you're a part of, and you're telling folks there are only certain people that can come into your store. And that is unfortunate. And so this term branding gets thrown around a lot. I think it's lost the meaning for a lot of people. When you say personal brand, are you actually talking about, your LinkedIn profile? Is it your bio? Is it the way you dress? What's your definition, of what really...
The definition, if I may.
Yes.
So
yes,
in
please.
1981, there was a book that was published by Al Reyes and Jack Troutmore.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Positioning the Battle for Your Mind. Please don't buy it. It's a shit book. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest.
That's great. No,
but in one of the
chapters, why?
Yeah. Okay. In one of the chapters, it talks about personal branding, right? And how you could utilize it to position yourself in your career. Well, that was 1981. Today, we think more in terms of more globally, right? Because we have internet. The internet has introduced, and I know this because I was on DARPA.net before it became the World Wide Web, and then also the internet. My background is in law enforcement. So the thing that I found so interesting is now we think more in terms of not your company, not an enterprise, but your industry. So personal branding is the perception or emotion maintained by somebody other than you that describes the experience of having a relationship with you. So it's beyond
Interesting.
CV or resume, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's even beyond what you're posting online. It's more frequently the things you do both offline and online that define you. So
Absolutely.
people used to say to me at the beginning of my personal branding practice, I'm going back now to 2002. I've been doing this for almost 25 years. Oh, you know what? I only use social media for personal friends and personal, family members and that kind of thing. And I'd scratch my head and say, now tell me something. Your top 5 customers, do you know them? Do you know their
Right.
Do you know their
Right.
Well, yes, yes, yes. They would nod. And I said, so would you say that your customers have kind of become your friends? Yes, they have. So this is the first time in the history of business where your personal and your professional have actually become
Or
integrated.
absolutely.
Did you just say
Absolutely.
word? Because if you did, I thought that was so cool.
I didn't, but you did. Word.
Word.
I
This
love,
is
I
straight out
love that.
about.
I- I-
That's kind of
there
cool.
you go. It's all about the brand. No, and your point's well taken. And I have struggled with that for some time and blurring the lines between my business brand and my personal brand. For long as I said, I'm not going to use Facebook and IG and Instagram and other platforms for my business. I'm only going to use LinkedIn because that's the business social media. But over time, I'm recognizing, to your point, many of my business associates are on these same platforms as well too. So why wouldn't I share what's going on in my business life into my personal social media platform and vice versa as well too?
Indeed.
So thank you for pointing that out. But I need to put a pin in it because I made a faux pas and I want to correct it. One of the first things I always generally do on my podcast is ask my guests to give their origin story. And we jump right into the meat of this conversation.
Oh, we
You did
did.
not do your origin story. So I'm putting a pin into this and we're going to take a commercial break.
AI is transforming healthcare, but modern care depends on infrastructure that cannot fail. Cisco's AI-ready Unified Edge securely unifies operations, the resilient infrastructure that modern healthcare demands.
And we're going to now go back to you and your personal story and why you're doing what you're doing today. So tell us about you.
So I always tell people when they meet me, I am part of the American experiment. My father was a French Jewish professor and artist. He was working in the MFA program at New York University. My mother was an Italian model. I was born in New York City, raised all over the world. My dad died when I was 6 months old. So
No.
I was a bit of a nomad, and I got very used to being somebody who moved around a lot from country to country because of my mother's modeling gigs. And I always tell people that I am truly part of the American experiment. I am first generation American. And I love what Lin-Manuel Miranda says in Broadway musical. I quote him all the time. He's so lovely and so incredibly creative and talented. Immigrants, we get the job done. If you look around, the great number of us.
Repeat that again for those who may have a
Sure.
problem with that.
It's a line out of a play that's a musical called Hamilton, and it's about Alexander Hamilton, how he came from
Yes.
the Caribbean to the United
I've
States.
seen it. Mhm.
And one of my favorite lines in the play, in the Broadway musical, is "Immigrants, we get the job done."
Right.
And I've always felt that, my existence was really to, in some way, shape, or form, make my family proud. So I wound up graduating university rather early. I joined International Mensa and didn't know at the time
We got a genius on the show today, folks.
that my IQ was being placed in a database, and I ultimately wound up working for the Department of Defense. So I was working for the NSA in my 20s during the time when, in 93, we had DARPA.net. And it was my role, because I'm a polyglot, as you know, I speak a few languages, to actually be an analyst. I even took the hostage negotiation course because I was just a sponge. I said yes to everything. I was very open-minded and very open-hearted. Ultimately, the company that I worked for, which was a subcontractor to the Department of Defense, had a gig here in Georgia. And if you would like, following the podcast, maybe in the notes of this podcast, you can add my TED Talk, because I talk
Sure.
about my TED Talk. I came to Atlanta, Georgia for a job with the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and went into a restaurant because I was so sick of eating barbecue and just the stuff that,
Right.
when you hang out with law enforcement folks, they love donuts and barbecue.
Sure. And you're a New Yorker too, so can I
Yeah,
have some
I'm
international cuisine?
no, I like French food. I like Italian food. I like multicultural. So I wound up finding this cafe, and there was a guy working in the cafe who, he said when I walked through the door, it was love at first sight. What I will say is that I thought it was the weirdest thing. It was very odd. His name was George Chang. He was Chinese and Swedish. He ultimately opened up the first sort of multicultural lounge in Atlanta in the 90s called MBQ. And we got engaged. We were together for 9 years. And my origin story really starts with him because being part of a relationship with someone that is an entrepreneur, if I may say,
Sure.
it's kind of romantic in that, well, for me anyways, in my opinion, it's romantic in that you see their dream come to life. And it's a cool thing to watch, and be a part
Absolutely.
of and invest
Yes.
in and
Exactly.
and it be successful.
Mhm.
Until George got really sick,
Mm.
with his second cancer. And as I mentioned, we were together for 9 years before I lost him to non-Hodgkin's related lymphoma that was actually caused by a skincare lesion. But it was really being part of that journey that
Sure.
that made me feel like I could probably do this.
Exactly.
Everything I'm learning, all this neurolinguistic pathology, all of
Right.
this criminal psychology and
Sure.
studying of the mind and analyzation of human behavior,
Mhm.
that's kind of like marketing.
Absolutely.
So now
Yeah.
I have a business that I always say my business is kind of like a chair. It's got 4 legs to it. I've got
Right.
personal employer branding. I've got what I do in AI and tech, right?
Right.
In e-commerce, anything and everything that has to do with regular marketing strategy and business
Right.
strategy, and then that social media piece, right?
Exactly.
Influencer marketing, social media marketing, loyalty marketing, referral
Sure.
marketing, that kind of thing. And all of them sort of feed into one another. And I've been so incredibly fortunate to work for brands like Coca-Cola, IBM, Intercontinental Hotels Group, L'Oreal, both
Exactly.
USA and Paris, and Ryan Seacrest, as you know.
That's absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. At least a little bit of your story. Is much more to it as well too, because you're a cancer survivor yourself as well too, and so that's a podcast for another day as
We
well
actually
too.
would toast one another because mine was ovarian and colon. I can't remember what yours were.
Well, I was diagnosed with 2 brain tumors. Luckily, though, in all transparency, mine was benign, so it wasn't malignant. So I was lucky, but I did have to have brain surgery.
Thank God for that. Cheers to you,
Absolutely.
Christopher.
Cheers to you as well. Absolutely. So I want to go back to our conversation we were having about branding. Here's what I hear from IT professionals all the time. I let my work speak for myself.
Mhm.
And I respect the ethos, but because I kind of grew up with that mindset, but I also learned that sometimes I learned it the hard way, that your work doesn't speak for yourself. That not in this industry, and quite honestly, probably not in any industry, because the person who gets the speaking invitation, the board seat, the consulting contract is not always the most qualified person. It's the most visible qualified person. So, give me your thoughts on that in terms of letting your work speak for itself.
Well, I'll go back to what I said previously, and that is we used to think back in the 80s, right? That book
Right.
by Jack Reyes and Al Troutmore, Al Reyes and Jack Troutmore, excuse me.
Sure.
It was really I think it was chapter 23 or something that they talk about, hey, you really should position yourself in your career inside an organization. Back then, we had all these enterprise organizations that people wanted to work for.
Right.
We now live, and I'm going to go back a little bit and share a little COVID statistic with you.
Sure.
COVID happens in 2020. What's the number one thing in January of 2021 the number one thing that is searched for in business on Google? How do I start my own company?
Right.
How do I become an entrepreneur? Because
Interesting.
at the time where companies were doing massive layoffs during COVID,
Mhm.
people had to work remotely. They were
Mhm.
the pressure of raising a family and, working. I'll give you a
Mhm.
statistic, and this is really interesting. This is a workforce statistic. In 2020, at the beginning, women made up 51% of the workforce in North America.
Right.
By the end of 2020, we were down literally to almost 38%. Why? Because moms are now leaving their jobs, okay, in America, which includes Canada, right?
Sure.
Leaving their jobs to basically raise the kids because of COVID, home, making sure that they play teacher, principal, guidance counselor, and, PE coach, physical education coach. So that also hurt our stats. That being said, it used to be, like I said, just enterprise. Now it's more industry-wide. And I know a ton of people who work in IT but have a side hustle.
Right. Absolutely.
They are visual artists, like someone. Maybe they're creators in that they have an Etsy and they make really cool coasters or really cool T-shirts or what have you. And what I will say is that I applaud those people. It's got to be hardworking, kind of two roles in life. Maybe a regular job as a project manager, let's say for a company like Intercontinental Hotels Group and working in the IT function.
Right.
Maybe having their own T-shirt firm or something like that. We call that, when you have a passion, but you also have purpose.
Right.
We call that courting your brand, your personal brand, meaning you one side of the business card that says, I am Christopher Cooney, CTO of Ask Me Your MD. Ask Me Your MD. But then the other side might be, I'm Christopher Cooney, visual artist, new next art. You see what I mean? And I applaud people who do that. I applaud people who take the time to really find something that they're passionate about and also focus on that. Because I'm going to be a little abrupt when I say this, and it's going to offend some people, but you don't find me somebody who gets absolutely 100% out of their day-to-day job. Find me that person. I would love to interview them. I've met I've worked with and met so many C-suite executives who say to me, this is great. I'm enjoying this, but I really have a passion for fly fishing, or I have a blog because I love to bake. Right. I find that a lot of C-suite folks, even entrepreneurs, have 5 or 6 little projects going because they're by nature intellectually curious, and I might say a little ADD or ADHD, right? And they're trying to really fulfill that part of their psyche that they that they don't get in their day-to-day job.
Sure. Well, we're multifaceted creatures as well, too, right? We're not just our jobs. We are our family, we are our passions, we are our interests, we are all these other things as well that we want to exercise in our life as well, too. And so many people tend to spend the majority of time on the business side. And it's not until late into their careers when they start, usually when you hit about 50, you start realizing I don't have as many summers anymore on this side as I do on the previous side. I'm starting to think about what I'm passionate about now. When people are nearly
what I want to do, if I can do anything in my practice with young executives or executives, it's really to get them to that point where they're doing something that they love, as well as being able to pay their bills, keep the lights on, keep the roof over them and their families' heads and that kind of thing. Because to me, again, I always want to say that being open for business also means being open in general.
Absolutely.
And I find that, what happens with people is that they wake up all of a sudden and it's retirement time.
Yes.
And around going, but I don't want to retire.
Right. Yeah. I'm not ready to, sit back and
I'm not ready to
in a rocking chair somewhere. Yes. Play golf all day.
Exactly. No. Some people are, that's fine and good for them. But what I find is the truly intellectually curious and busy entrepreneurs that I work with, they are the ones that want to keep stuff going. They want to have things that go. And I find that most entrepreneurs, once they become successful in one area, one of the things that they do is that they tend to have 5 or 6 other little companies that they've either invested in or thinking about launching that are of some sort of interest to them. That they can then launch. But we're getting a little bit off topic. But
I think it's good and it's important because you do have to do some internal soul searching as well too, to try to understand what's important to you and then how that's going to affect your brand as well. So no, I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I did want to let's get practical. And If someone's listening right now, let's say they're a healthcare IT professional or a mid-careerist, they've got a solid track record, they've got good relationships, but nobody outside of their organization really knows who they are. And they decided today that I want to do something about that. Where do they start?
So I'm going to start with almost something that's backwards, okay? And what we say is that think about where your audience is. So if you are looking for a new job today, and I'm not asking people that are listening to your podcast to leave their job, okay? Just that's my disclaimer, right? Talent acquisition professionals spend most of their time on two specific social media platforms.
Right.
Facebook for small business and LinkedIn for enterprise. So if they had to focus on just one area, if they are looking to really grow in their industry, I would say LinkedIn. If they're looking to be attractive to small business, let's say they want to work as a consultant or launch a small business on the side of what they're doing day to day, Facebook. Now, I really love Instagram. I have some trepidation about TikTok, which we can get into when you're ready.
Sure.
I think that Twitter and Blue Sky, one of the things I love about Blue Sky is that Twitter, because it's now X, is owned by Elon Musk. It has changed dramatically. I know of many C-suite leaders who they listen, but they're not as active on Twitter or X longer.
Exactly.
And I'm old school. Like I joined in 2006 when being launched at South by Southwest, so I get it, right? But it's really become more of a political platform and become a place for, and I'm quoting somebody else when I say this, angry grandpas, right?
Right.
So that being said, people who are not angry grandpas have gotten off of X.
Right.
I think that some people have issue with the current ownership.
Sure.
One of the things I love about Blue Sky, and I'm just, noticing, I'm seeing more convivial conversation, more community building. I see a collegiate type folks on there, a lot of academics. I tend to follow people who they're writers or they're inventors or they're professors of a certain topic that I'm interested in. I've got a very strong background in NLP, so I follow a lot of those folks.
Exactly.
But I also think it's really interesting. If I were, like you said, a brand new to this, I'm just trying to build my personal brand.
Sure.
I would ask the top 10 people that you care about, like your boss, maybe a colleague, maybe somebody in the industry that you really, admire, that you've been following. Where are you? So very specific industry, like let's say you're in healthcare IT, right?
Yes.
You might not necessarily want to follow a creator who does makeup for a living.
Right.
Might not be your audience.
Yeah.
Okay, those people have their niche, and that's wonderful. But you might want to follow a Christopher Cooney or ask them, say, where are you present? And ask them, because your audiences, you need to go where your family is. You need to go where your community is. And I always start out by saying, first, find out where your audience are. Where are your peeps?
Sure.
Yes, you do need to exist on LinkedIn, and yes, you do need to exist on Facebook, but maybe there is a group on Instagram that you didn't know about that's healthcare IT. And in my practice, I teach what I call the 6 E's. Educate, engage, entertain, emote, empathy, and empower.
Exactly.
And I find that, and they're not always, in that order, but I'm just kind of, I call them my 6 E's because each and every piece of content should do one of those 6 things.
Right.
You don't have to have all of them. Maybe you do 3 of the 6 in one post.
Right.
I don't know.
But they need to check at least one of those boxes.
Exactly. And I find that it's the content that has some thread of those 6 E's that people respond to.
Sure.
One of the reasons why I added empathy is because I really saw during COVID how people changed online. And it started to be okay, because I'm a, child of the 90s, right? I have this. It started to be okay to talk about the fact that mental illness is a real disease.
There's depression. Yeah, I'm depressed.
Just like, heart disease.
Sure.
It needs to be, so is anxiety. And there were a great number of people. And I almost am a little jealous of millennials and zillennials. That's what I like to call Generation Z and Alpha.
Right.
Because they grew up in a time where you can talk about it. And it was okay.
That's
You're
right.
in 90s. If you said you weren't doing well at work and you felt a little anxiety and this, that, people look at you like, oh, so you don't want to work? Is there,
Right, right.
you know what I mean? Where,
Or you go back to my generation. I'm the last
yeah.
generation of baby boomers. You just didn't talk about it at all. You know, you just drink. You drink
And
your
then you add on
problems
top of
away.
that, you add on top of that the cultural
Self-medicated.
piece. Yeah, the cultural piece where a lot of African Americans didn't believe in going to a psychologist or
That's right.
psychiatrist. They
Absolutely. You were crazy.
if God can't help me, right?
Right.
But
That's right.
you might have a chemical imbalance in your brain.
Mhm.
You might have literally a neurological issue
Right.
that we all appreciate him.
Sure.
Everything can be solved by prayer, you know?
Right. Right.
And thank God for medicine. And so
Right.
being a
Well,
person,
I think everyone finds their own source of therapy, and some is prayer. And I'll be perfectly honest, I use that quite a bit. But there are other things that people can pursue as well too that helps them where they are. So I think you meet people where they are as well too. I did want to ask a question about niche markets like healthcare, for example, healthcare technology in particular. You know, in this industry, you know, the audience in our industry is kind of a very specific ecosystem. You know, we have industry events we all attend, organizations like HIMSS, you know, HCHE, NAHSE, Chime, a whole bunch of alphabet soup of
that's a
associations.
lot of acronyms, my friend. You're going to
Yes,
have to
yes.
define some of those for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of alphabet soup of associations and conferences and events. But it's interesting though, it's still a relatively small world with a lot of influence concentrated in these very small number of rooms. How does a personal brand work in a niche industry? I think you touched a little bit on it earlier, but when you're in a niche market like healthcare IT, give me your perspective on that.
Sure. I'm going to use an old IT term, test and learn.
Right, right.
Test and learn. You notice how when like you're releasing code, there's always that quality assurance person that's
Mhm.
making sure, hey, let's make sure there's no bugs in this so it won't affect other systems. And now I'm going to talk a little bit like an IT person, right? Test and learn.
Sure.
What I
Right.
find is that if you're really starting out and you're a newbie to personal branding,
Mhm.
go and look for LinkedIn groups that are very specific to your job responsibility. For
I
instance,
do that a lot.
if I'm a project manager, let's say, and I work for a healthcare system. Like
Mhm.
I work for Emory Healthcare, right?
Right.
What I might seek out is project managers in healthcare IT and join that group first. It
Yes.
used to be that you only really wanted to join the groups on LinkedIn that had 500 or more members, but gone are those days. I
Right.
would recommend that if you're kind of courting your personal brand and trying to figure out what you
Mhm.
should write about, go in and do what my grandfather used to say when I was a little girl. You have two
Right.
eyes, two ears, and one mouth. Use them accordingly. Go in
I
and
love it.
lead. Find out what's the
Yes.
tone of the conversation. Right?
Exactly. Mhm.
Listen, look,
Right. Right.
observe. And then if you want to
Mhm.
post a piece of content or there's something there that you think,
Sure.
hey, I could grab that content from Christopher Cooney that just posted it, using you as an example, and we
Mhm.
call it jumping the shark in social media, where you tag
Right.
somebody who's semi-famous like yourself,
Right.
right? In
Exactly.
my post
Oh,
is, hey, Christopher Cooney had these 3 really top things that he said that came out of HIMMS in Las Vegas. I was there too, but here's my 4th one. Here's the
right,
4th
right,
thing that I
right.
learned out of going to that conference. He was correct with these 3, but I'm just gonna add my 4th one, right?
Sure,
You
sure.
can do that, and what that does is not only say, "Hey, I'm giving some props to somebody that I respect in the industry,"
Right,
but
right,
I'm
right.
also creating my own voice
Exactly.
by adding my 2 pesos, right? My 2
Sure.
cents.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. So this has got to be like a part one of part two conversation because there's so many. I've got like two, three more pages of conversation I want to have with you. But
I'm happy to come back. You
yeah, we're gonna have to have you back because
I get to look at an
I'm just
attractive
getting
man
started with
for an
you.
hour? Who would say no?
Yeah, I
Come on.
know. And I try to commit to not letting my show go past about 45 minutes to an hour. And this has been such an entertaining conversation. I think our guests would love to hear more from you and get your perspective on it as well too. So, and I call my listeners my tribe. So, tribe, we're going to make this part one of a multi-part series with Dorothéa. And so, but before we wrap up today, I want her to share a little bit more about her company and how you can reach out to her. I mean, if you're interested in enhancing your personal brand for your company, for yourself, for your foundation, whatever your passion and mission is, I want her to be able to share with you how to reach out to her, but also let her give some final thoughts to this conversation as well.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank your listeners for listening in, and for you for extending the kind invitation to have me, I'm really honored. And what I would say is that if they want to connect with me, the best way to do it is through my email address, which is Dorothéa at Social Espionage, spells just like it sounds.com. But I'm also at Social Espionage on Blue Sky, X, and Instagram. I do have a Twitter account, but I really use it more for my clients and not for myself because I still have some trepidation for that one. On LinkedIn, I'm Dorothéa Bozicolona-Volpe. You can find me everywhere. I'm happy to connect with you. You choose the platform. You don't have to email me if you don't want to. If you want to reach out to me in one of those platforms and that makes you feel more comfortable, I'm completely fine with that. And again, I just wanted to thank you for the generous gift of your time today. This has been lovely.
Thank you so much, Dorothéa. Well, we're going to drop the mic on this conversation for today. You heard it from the GOAT of social branding, Dorothéa, and please go visit socialespionage.com. Check her out on LinkedIn as well, and enhance your own personal brand and digital footprint. And ask yourself honestly, does this tell when you go out and Google yourself, and I would encourage anyone to do that. I've done it. I do it all the time. Or check your social media profiles out. Does this really tell the story of who you are, what you want the industry and society to view you and know you by? And if not, what are you doing to address that? So with that, I'm going to say thank you, Tribe, for tuning in to another episode of the award-winning podcast, now approaching 100 episodes. So if you like what we do, then please share this with your friends, family, even people you don't care that much about, right? Because folks can definitely benefit from this amazing woman's thought leadership and perspective to improve their lives and make it better to be around them too. With that, take care, God bless, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.
Changemakers in the building, can't ignore the sound. Truth gets spilled, innovation breaking ground. Straight Outta Health IT, where the talk stay free. Tune in, turn up, this is where you wanna be. Data-driven dreams, they decode the code. Hack the status quo, make the old ways implode. Gusts dropping gems like pockets of gold mines. Healthcare's front lines, redesigned in real time. Honey got the mic, architect of the chatter. Revolutions in the air, healthcare's new chapter. From telehealth to equity, nothing stays unseen. This is more than a podcast, it's the dream machine. The system's pulse is beating to the sound. Voices of change tearing back.